The stars looked different from the bridge of the Kelrian flagship. Admiral Zex Torol had noticed this change over recent months. Stars that once shone bright, now dimmed behind clouds of debris, the remains of destroyed worlds. His people were losing their fight for survival. "Admiral, the Council is waiting," said Lieutenant Calarix. Her voice was steady, but her 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress among their kind. Admiral Zex Torol nodded. "Tell them I come." He took one last look at the stars before following his lieutenant through the curved hallways of the massive ship. The Kelrian alliance had once been proud and strong, with a fleet of 10,000 warships. Now, barely 500 remained. The Vorax swarm had seen to that. The council chamber fell silent as Admiral Zex Torol entered. 12 alien dignitaries sat around a circular table, each representing a different world in the alliance. Many seats stood empty, their worlds already lost. "Honored Council," the Admiral began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "I bring grim news. The Vorax have taken the Bellari system. All 4 planets and 16 moon colonies are lost. Counselor Mithrana, an elegant being with blue skin and silver eyes, gasped. "That system had our largest shipyards." "Yes," said the Admiral. "And its defense fleet of 200 ships was destroyed in less than a day." The room erupted with voices, each counselor speaking over the others. Fear filled the air like a heavy fog. "Silence," called Admiral Zex Torol. When the noise died down, he continued. "Our weapons cannot harm them anymore. The Vorax adapt too quickly. Each time we find a weakness, they fix it and come back stronger. So, we are doomed," said a gray-skinned counselor from the outer worlds. The Admiral paused. "Perhaps not. There may be one option we haven't tried." The council members leaned forward, desperate for hope. "We have reports that the Vorax sent a scout force to a distant galaxy 3 cycles ago. This force never returned." The Admiral touched a control, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a small blue-green planet. The scouts were destroyed by the natives of this world, a species known as humans. "Humans?" Counselor Mithrana frowned. "The primitive beings from Earth? They have barely left their own star system." "That is not quite accurate," corrected the Admiral. "They have colonies on 27 worlds now. But yes, by our standards, they are primitive. Their ships are small, and their weapons simple. But somehow they defeated the Vorax when our advanced technology could not." The council chamber grew quiet as everyone considered this information. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" asked Mithrana. "I propose we send an envoy to Earth. Ask these humans for help." Several counselors laughed. One stood up in anger. "Ask primitives to save us? This is madness. Their entire fleet could fit inside one of our dreadnoughts." Admiral Zixtor remained calm. "Yet they defeated the Vorax. We have not." "It was only a scout force," protested another counselor. "Even a scout force has proven too much for some of our border worlds," the Admiral replied. "I believe we should try every option before surrendering to extinction." After much debate, the council agreed. Lieutenant Calarix volunteered to make the journey to Earth. As the most junior officer in the room, she had the least to lose. 2 days later, Calarix departed in a small diplomatic vessel. The journey would take weeks, even using the quantum gate network that connected the galaxies. As her ship disappeared into the first gate, Admiral Zex Torol wondered if he would ever see her again. "The Vorax will not wait," he said to himself. "Watching the gate close, we must prepare for the worst." The worst came sooner than expected. 3 more systems fell while Calarix was away. The Admiral ordered evacuations, saving millions of lives but losing valuable territory. The Kelrian fleet retreated again and again, buying time with their own destruction. Then, 17 days after her departure, Lieutenant Colerix returned. Admiral Zextoral was on the bridge when her ship emerged from the quantum gate. "Open a channel," he ordered. Colerix appeared on the view screen. The lieutenant looked tired but excited. "Admiral, I have made contact with the humans. I spoke with their United Defense Council and explained our situation. And the Admiral tried not to sound too hopeful. They have agreed to help. They will send a fleet. Relief washed over the bridge crew. Even the Admiral allowed himself a small smile. When will they arrive?" he asked. Their representative, a man named Frank Daniels, promised the fleet would depart in 3 days. Given travel time through the gate network, they should arrive within 3 weeks. The Admiral's smile faded. 3 weeks? The Vorax will have reached our core worlds by then. "I expressed this concern," said Colerix. "The humans seemed confident we could hold out." "Did you see their fleet? Their weapons?" Colerix hesitated. "No, Admiral. I was not permitted to visit their military installations. But they seemed very certain about their ability to help." Admiral Zextoral sighed. "Then we must trust them. And we must hold the line until they arrive." The next 3 weeks were the hardest of the Admiral's long life. The Vorax pressed their advantage, sensing the Kellrians' weakness. 2 more systems fell. 3 dreadnoughts were lost, defending the gateway to the inner worlds. The remaining ships formed a last defensive line around the homeworld. On the 21st day, Admiral Zextoral stood on the bridge of his flagship. His crew was exhausted. His ship was damaged. But they had held the line. "Admiral," called the sensor operator, "the quantum gate is activating." The massive ring structure in space began to glow with energy. The quantum gate was large enough for even the biggest Kellrian ships to pass through. The Admiral wondered what size warships the humans would send. Life signs? He asked. "Reading numerous small vessels emerging from the gate," reported the sensor operator, sounding confused. "But these can't be right." "Show me," ordered the Admiral. The main view screen activated. The quantum gate pulsed with blue energies. The first human ship emerged. It was tiny, barely the size of a Kellrian shuttle. The design was sleek and clearly built for speed, but it showed no obvious weapons. "Is that their advanced scout?" asked someone on the bridge. Before anyone could answer, more ships appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. But they weren't military vessels. The Kellrians watched in confusion as mining ships, passenger transports, scientific vessels, and cargo haulers poured through the gate. A few military ships were mixed in, but they made up only a small fraction of the fleet. "There must be some mistake," said the Admiral. "These are civilian vessels." The communications officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "On screen," ordered Zextoral. The image changed to show a human woman with short blonde hair. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal markings of rank. "Greetings, Admiral Zextoral. I'm Captain Lisa Walsh of Earth's Volunteer Defense Fleet. We understand you have a Vorax problem." The Admiral stared at the human in disbelief. "Captain Walsh, we requested military assistance." "Where is your war fleet?" Lisa smiled. "This is our fleet, Admiral. Every ship you see volunteered when we put out the call for help. They're crewed by ordinary citizens, farmers, teachers, miners, doctors, all here to help save your people. Civilians?" The Admiral couldn't hide his shock. "The Vorax will destroy them." "With respect, Admiral," said Lisa, her smile fading. "We've fought the Vorax before and won. Our approach is different from yours, but it works. Now, would you like to hear our plan, or should we turn around and go home?" Admiral Zextoral looked at the ragtag fleet of human vessels still emerging from the gate. This was not what he had expected, not what he had hoped for. But as he watched more and more ships appear, now numbering over 500, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. "We would be honored to hear your plan, Captain," he said at last, not behind him. Lieutenant Colorix whispered, "I think the Vorax are in for a surprise." The Admiral couldn't help but agree. The human fleet wasn't what they expected, but perhaps that was exactly why it would work. The Calrian war room buzzed with nervous energy. Admiral Zextoril stood at the large round table, looking at the holographic map that showed the Vorax swarm's latest movements. Beside him stood Captain Lisa Walsh and 4 other humans each, wearing different clothing that marked them as non-military personnel. "Your civilians cannot fight this war," said the Admiral, pointing at the massive red cloud that represented thousands of Vorax ships. "Look at their numbers. Look at their formation. They move as one mind." Lisa nodded calmly. "That's exactly why we'll win." She turned to the older man beside her. "Pete, explain your approach." Pete Gordon scratched his gray beard. Unlike Lisa, he wore a worn jumpsuit with patches, showing it had been repaired many times. "I run mining operations back home. My ships are built to break apart asteroids with sonic waves." He pointed to the small fleet of bulky vessels that had come through the gate. "We've adjusted those same tools to target the crystal structure of Vorax ships." The Calrian officers exchanged doubtful looks. A younger woman with dark hair stepped forward. "I'm Olivia Martinez. My research ships have been fitted with electromagnetic pulse generators. They can temporarily shut down the Vorax neural network. And our cargo haulers," added a man with a friendly smile, "are now carrying special mines that can disrupt Vorax communication signals. I'm Alan Baker, by the way. My brother Steve and I run a shipping company." Admiral Zextoril frowned. "These are not proper weapons of war." The final human, a quiet man with kind eyes who had been introduced simply as Jack, spoke up. "That's the point, Admiral. Your military fought the Vorax with traditional weapons and lost because the Vorax adapted. They've never faced mining equipment, or research tools, or shipping containers turned into weapons." "What Jack means," Lisa explained, "is that the Vorax can quickly adapt to one type of attack, but they struggle when faced with many different types of attacks at once. Each of our ships brings something unique to the fight." Lieutenant Colorix, who had been silent until now, asked, "How will you coordinate so many different ships without a unified command structure?" Lisa smiled. "We don't need one. Every ship captain knows their role. We've divided into task forces, each with a specific mission." She touched the holographic display, highlighting different groups of human vessels. Mining ships will target their largest vessels. Research ships will provide electronic countermeasures. Medical ships will stay back to help damaged vessels. And so on. "And your actual warships?" asked the Admiral. "Will provide cover for the civilian vessels and strike when the Vorax are confused by our other attacks," Lisa replied. "Admiral, we need your remaining military ships to hold back as our reserve force. When we create an opening, you can deliver the final blow." The Calrian officers murmured among themselves. This plan went against all their military training. It seemed chaotic, disorganized. "You are asking us to put the fate of our civilization in the hands of miners and traders," said Admiral Zextoril. "How can we trust this will work?" Jack stepped closer to the Admiral. "Because we've done it before. Humans don't have the resources for massive war fleets like yours. We never did. So we learned to use what we have in creative ways. When the Vorax Scout Force attacked Earth 3 years ago, it was civilian ships just like these that stopped them." Before the Admiral could respond, alarms blared throughout the war room. A Calrian officer rushed in. "Admiral, the Vorax have been detected. They'll reach our position in 6 hours." The room erupted into activity. Calrian officers rushed to battle stations while the humans remained surprisingly calm. Lisa turned to her companions. Time to get back to our ships. You all know what to do." As the humans prepared to leave, Admiral Zextorol called out, "Wait, we haven't finalized the battle plan." Lisa paused at the door. "The plan is simple, Admiral. We'll create chaos. Your job is to strike when we tell you to." She smiled. "Try not to worry. This isn't our first rodeo." "Rodeo?" repeated the Admiral, confused by the term. "It means we've done this kind of thing before," explained Pete with a grin before following Lisa out. Admiral Zextorol and Lieutenant Colerex returned to the bridge of their flagship. Through the view screen, they could see the human fleet spreading out into formation. "What are they doing?" asked the Admiral as the human ships began to move in seemingly random patterns. "They're breaking formation." Colerex studied the movements carefully. I think this is their formation, sir. Each group is positioning for their specific task." 6 hours passed quickly. Soon, the Vorax swarm appeared on long-range sensors. Thousands of identical crystalline ships moving in perfect synchronization, like a single organism with many parts. "They're beautiful in a terrible way," whispered Colerex. The Admiral nodded grimly. "And deadly. They've destroyed every fleet they've encountered." "Until now," said Colerex with more confidence than she felt. The Vorax approached in their standard attack pattern, a massive wave designed to overwhelm enemy defenses. The Admiral had seen this formation break through Calrian defensive lines on multiple occasions. He held his breath as the wave neared the scattered human fleet. "Incoming transmission from Captain Walsh," announced the communications officer. Lisa's face appeared on screen. She was now wearing a simple helmet and what looked like protective gear. "Admiral, the show's about to start. Keep your ships back until we call for you." The first Vorax ships reached the outer edge of the human fleet. Instead of firing weapons, the human mining vessels activated their sonic equipment. Visible waves rippled through space, causing cracks to appear in the crystal hulls of the Vorax ships. Elsewhere, research vessels launched electromagnetic pulses. That caused entire sections of the Vorax fleet to drift aimlessly, their neural connections temporarily severed. "It's working," said Colerex in amazement. The Admiral watched as human cargo ships suddenly revealed hidden compartments, releasing clouds of tiny drones that attached themselves to Vorax vessels and began boring through their hulls. "These are not weapons of war," he said quietly. "These are tools repurposed for war." A group of human passenger ships accelerated directly toward the largest Vorax vessel. For a moment, the Admiral thought they were planning to crash into it, a suicide run. But at the last moment, they released what looked like metallic dust and veered away. The dust coated the Vorax command ship and began disabling its external sensors. "They fight unlike any species I've seen," said the Admiral, unable to hide his growing admiration. The view screen suddenly showed Lisa again. Her face was now streaked with sweat, but her eyes were bright with determination. "Admiral, we're implementing Phase 2. Move your warships to these coordinates." Data streamed across the Calrian tactical display, dot as the Calrian ships repositioned. The human fleet's seemingly random movements suddenly revealed their purpose. The scattered vessels had been herding the Vorax into a complex three-dimensional trap. Now, as the formation completed, hundreds of human ships activated different weapon systems simultaneously. The effect was devastating. Vorax ships accustomed to adapting to single threats were bombarded with dozens of different attack types at once. Their perfect formation began to break apart as individual ships tried to adapt to different threats. "Now, Admiral," Lisa's voice rang out, "target their command vessel. Its defenses are down. The Calrian warships, their advanced weapon systems." Finally finding vulnerable targets, opened fire on the massive Vorax command ship. It shattered in a brilliant explosion that rippled through the entire Vorax fleet. Without central coordination, the remaining Vorax ships began to drift aimlessly or flee in random directions. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Zex Toril watched as the Vorax retreated. We did it," said Calerix, her voice filled with wonder. "The humans actually did it." The Admiral nodded slowly, still processing what he had witnessed. "No, Lieutenant. We did it together, and I believe this is just the beginning." News of the victory spread quickly through what remained of the Kelrian alliance. For the first time in years, there was hope. The Vorax had been defeated, not destroyed completely, but forced to retreat, something no other species had accomplished. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Zex Toril called a meeting aboard his flagship. The large conference room was filled with both Kelrian officers and human ship captains. The mood was positive but serious. Everyone knew this was just one victory in what would be a long war. "The Vorax will return," said the Admiral, standing. "At the head of the table. They always do. And they will have adapted to some of our tactics." Lisa Walsh nodded. "We expect that. It's why we've already started developing new approaches." "New approaches?" asked Lieutenant Calerix. "But the battle just ended." Pete Gordon, the mining ship captain, laughed. "Humans are always thinking ahead, young lady. My crews are already modifying our sonic equipment to work on different frequencies." Olivia Martinez, who led the research vessels, added, "And we're analyzing the data we collected during the battle. The Vorax made some interesting adaptations to our electromagnetic pulses. We can use that information to develop more effective countermeasures." Admiral Zex Toril looked impressed. "Your people work quickly." "We have to," said Lisa. "The Vorax won't give us much time. Based on their previous behavior patterns, we estimate they'll return within 2 weeks." The room grew quiet. 2 weeks was not much time to prepare for another. Battle.Jack, the quiet human who seemed to hold some authority among his people, spoke up. "We need to use this time wisely, not just to prepare our defenses, but to take the fight to them." "Take the fight to the Vorax?" The Admiral looked shocked. "No one has ever successfully attacked a Vorax hive world. No one has ever made them retreat before either," Jack pointed out. "We've proven they can be hurt. Now we need to show them we can hurt them at home." The meeting continued for hours as humans and Kelrians debated strategy. By the end, a plan was forming, not just to defend against the next Vorax attack, but to strike at one of their forward bases. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Zex Toril approached Jack. "Your people surprise me," he admitted. "I did not expect civilians to be so effective in war." Jack smiled slightly. "We're not warriors by nature, Admiral, but we protect what matters to us. And right now, that includes your people." "Why?" asked the Admiral. "Why would humans risk their lives for aliens they've never met before?" "Because that's what humans do," Jack replied simply. "We help those in need." Over the next week, the human fleet dispersed throughout the Kelrian system. Some ships helped evacuate endangered colonies. Others worked to repair damaged Kelrian vessels. Mining ships extracted resources from asteroids to build new weapons. Research vessels studied Vorax technology salvaged from destroyed ships. A small moon base that had been converted into a medical facility, Kelrian doctors watched in amazement as human. Medical ships treated wounded soldiers with techniques the Kelrians had never seen before. "Your methods are unusual," said Chief Medical Officer Vristal to a human doctor named Linda Scott. Linda smiled as she applied a regenerative gel to a Kelrian soldier's injured arm. "We developed most of these treatments for mining accidents and exploration mishaps. When you don't have advanced military medicine, you learn to improvise." The injured soldier flexed his arm, surprised at how the pain had already lessened. "It works well," he said. Meanwhile, on the Kelrian homeworld, Human engineers worked alongside local technicians to modify planetary defense systems. The problem? With your shields, explained a human engineer named Carl Woods, is that they're designed to block energy weapons. The Vorax use crystalline projectiles that can pass right through. Our shield technology is the most advanced in 3 galaxies. Protested a Kellerian engineer. Carl shrugged. Maybe so, but on Earth, we learned to use simple electromagnetic fields to deflect physical objects. It's not as fancy as your shields, but it works against the Vorax. Across the system, similar scenes played out because humans shared their knowledge and technology with the Kellerians. It wasn't advanced technology. In fact, most of it was considered primitive by Kellerian standards. But it was different, unexpected, and that made it effective against the Vorax. 10 days after the battle, long-range sensors detected Vorax activity at the edge of the system. As predicted, they were returning, and in greater numbers. Admiral Zextoro called Lisa Walsh to the command center on the Kellerian homeworld. Holographic displays showed the approaching Vorax fleet. "There are at least twice as many ships as before," said the Admiral grimly. Lisa studied the displays. "They're not taking any chances this time. They know we hurt them. Are your people ready?" Lisa nodded. "As ready as we'll ever be. But before they get here, we need to execute the first part of our plan. The strike against their forward base," said the Admiral. "It's risky. If it fails, we'll have wasted resources we need for defense. If it succeeds," countered Lisa, "we'll divide their forces and buy ourselves more time." After a moment, the Admiral nodded. "Very well. Which of your warships will lead the attack?" Lisa smiled. "No warships, Admiral. We're sending the Baker twins and their cargo haulers." "Cargo ships? Against a Vorax base?" The Admiral couldn't hide his shock. "Trust me," said Lisa. "Those cargo ships are carrying something special." 2 hours later, a small fleet of 20 human cargo vessels slipped away from the Kellerian system. Led by Alan and Steve Baker, they took a roundabout route to avoid Vorax patrols. "This is crazy," said a Kellerian officer watching them depart. "Sending cargo ships on an attack mission?" Lieutenant Colerix, who had been working closely with the humans, shook her head. "You still don't understand humans. They use what they have in ways no one expects. Those cargo ships are perfect for this mission, precisely because the Vorax won't see them as threats." The Kellerian officer frowned. "What are they carrying that makes them so special?" "I don't know exactly," admitted Colerix. "Something the humans call nanits, microscopic machines designed to eat through Vorax crystal structures." Meanwhile, the Baker twins' fleet approached the Vorax forward base, a massive, crystalline structure built around a captured asteroid. "All ships, final check," said Alan Baker over the communication channel. "Everyone ready to deliver our special package?" Affirmative responses came from all 19 other ships. "Remember," added Steve Baker, "we go in quiet, drop the containers, and get out fast. No heroics." The human ships approached the Vorax base from different angles, looking like nothing more than lost cargo vessels. Vorax patrol ships moved to intercept them, but did not attack immediately. As the humans had predicted, the Vorax did not see cargo ships as threats. This was their mistake. When the human ships were in position, they simultaneously released thousands of small containers. Each container held millions of nanits programmed to target and break down the unique crystal structure of Vorax technology. As the containers drifted toward the base, the human ships turned and accelerated away. Vorax patrol ships finally opened fire, but it was too late. The containers had reached the base. Within hours, the nanits began their work. The massive crystalline structure of the base started to crumble as the tiny machines ate through connection points and support structures. By the time the main Vorax fleet realized what was happening, Their forward base had already begun to collapse. Thousands of Vorax ships turned back to deal with this unexpected threat, significantly reducing the force heading toward the Kellerian system. When the Baker twins returned with all 20 ships intact, they were greeted as heroes. "It worked perfectly," Alan reported to Admiral Zextorol and Lisa Walsh. "The base is falling apart, and half the Vorax fleet has turned back to deal with it." The Admiral looked at Lisa with new respect. "Cargo ships, nanits, mining equipment. Your people turn everyday tools into weapons of war." Lisa nodded. "Because that's what we have. We adapt what we know to solve the problems we face." "And now," said Steve Baker with a grin, "we're ready for round 2 with the Vorax who are still coming this way." The remaining Vorax ships arrived 3 days later. Though reduced in number, thanks to the Baker twins' mission, they still outnumbered the combined human and Kellerian fleet. But this time, the defenders were ready. "They've changed their formation," observed Admiral Zextorol from the command center. The holographic display showed the Vorax approaching in smaller, more spread-out groups, rather than their usual massive wave. "They're adapting," said Lisa Walsh. "They don't want to be caught in the same trap twice." Jack nodded. "This is good. It means they fear us now." The Admiral looked doubtful. "They've divided their forces to avoid our sonic weapons and electromagnetic pulses." "Which is exactly what we wanted them to do," said Lisa with a smile. "Pete, you're up." Pete Gordon, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. "My mining ships are ready. We've modified our equipment based on what we learned in the first battle." The Admiral watched as the bulky mining vessels moved into position. Instead of activating their sonic weapons, they suddenly released hundreds of small spherical objects. "What are those?" asked Lieutenant Calerix. "Mining drones," explained Pete. "We normally use them to map asteroids before breaking them apart. Now they're programmed to attach to Vorax ships and transmit their exact positions. As the drones spread through space, they attach themselves to Vorax vessels." The holographic display suddenly lit up with precise targeting data for every Vorax ship. "Now your weapons can track them, even when they try to hide," said Pete proudly. Admiral Zextorol quickly ordered his gunners to use the new targeting data. Kellerian energy weapons, which had previously struggled to lock onto the fast-moving Vorax ships, now fired with deadly accuracy. But the Vorax adapted quickly. Their ships began to emit a crystalline dust that confused the drone's sensors. "They're learning," said the Admiral. "So are we," replied Lisa. She turned to Olivia Martinez. "Time for Phase 2. Olivia nodded and sent a signal to her fleet of research vessels. They moved forward, not toward the main Vorax force, but toward the space between them and the sun. "What are they doing?" asked the Admiral. "Watch," said Jack. The research vessels deployed large, reflective panels that caught the sun's light and focused it like massive magnifying glasses. Beams of intensified sunlight shot toward the Vorax ships, heating their crystalline structures. "The Vorax ships are made of living crystal," explained Olivia. "They can adapt to weapons, but they're sensitive to rapid temperature changes." On the display, they could see Vorax ships twisting away from the light beams. Some smaller vessels cracked under the thermal stress. "Ingenious," murmured the Admiral. But again, the Vorax adapted. Their ships rotated to distribute the heat and released more crystalline dust to scatter the light. The battle continued for hours, with each side adapting to the other's tactics. Human ships used methods no military would consider. Fishing nets modified to snare Vorax vessels, agricultural sprayers that released corrosive compounds, even communication buoys that broadcast sounds painful to the Vorax's crystalline structure. Each time the Vorax adapted to one approach, the humans switched to another. It wasn't elegant or efficient by military standards, but it was effective. The Vorax couldn't predict what would come next. 6 hours into the battle, both sides had taken losses. 15 human ships had been destroyed, and dozens more damaged. The Kelrian fleet had lost 3 of its remaining dreadnoughts. But the Vorax had suffered far worse. Nearly a third of their force was destroyed or disabled. Then something unexpected happened. The Vorax ships suddenly pulled back and regrouped. "Are they retreating again?" asked Calarix hopefully. Lisa shook her head, studying the enemy movements. "No, they're changing tactics." The Vorax fleet had formed into a tight sphere. Then, a move no one predicted, the sphere began to glow with energy. The ships were combining their power. "Everyone pull back," ordered Jack urgently. "They're going to release an energy surge." The human and Kelrian ships scrambled to retreat, but they weren't fast enough. A massive wave of energy burst from the Vorax sphere, racing outward in all directions. When it hit the defending fleet, ships lost power. Engines died. Weapon systems went offline. "What happened?" demanded the Admiral as emergency lights came on in the command center. "Electromagnetic pulse," said Olivia grimly. "They've adapted our own tactic and used it against us." Across the fleet, human and Kelrian ships drifted helplessly. The Vorax sphere uncurled, and individual ships began to advance on the defenseless fleet. "All is lost," whispered the Admiral. "Not yet," said Lisa firmly. She turned to a communication officer. "Contact the second wave. Tell them it's time." "Second wave?" The Admiral looked confused. "What second wave?" Before Lisa could answer, new ships appeared on the still-functioning long-range sensors. Dozens of human vessels were emerging from behind the system's outer planets where they had been hiding. "You held ships in reserve?" asked the Admiral in surprise. Lisa nodded. "Always have a backup plan." These ships were shielded against electromagnetic pulses. We suspected the Vorax might try to use our own tactics against us. The new human ships rushed forward to engage the Vorax. Unlike the first wave, these vessels were all older models. Ships with minimal electronic systems that couldn't be disabled by the pulse. "Those look like antiques," said Calarix, recognizing ships that appeared decades out of date. "Sometimes old technology is the best defense against new threats," said Jack with a smile. "Those ships use mechanical systems instead of electronic ones. The pulse can't affect them." The Vorax, unprepared for this new threat, scattered in confusion. Their strategy had assumed all enemy ships would be disabled by the pulse. Leading the second wave was a stocky vessel that looked like it had been patched together from spare parts. Its captain, a woman named Betty Alvarez, had spent most of her life running a restaurant on Earth before volunteering for the fleet. "This is Betty." Her voice crackled over the still-functioning emergency communication system. "Don't worry about your disabled ships. We'll keep the Vorax busy while you get systems back online." Betty's ship and the others engaged the Vorax, using simple kinetic weapons, essentially firing solid metal slugs at high velocity. Against the Vorax crystal structures, these primitive weapons proved surprisingly effective. Meanwhile, human engineers worked frantically to restore power to the disabled fleet. They had prepared for this possibility and had backup systems ready to deploy. Slowly, ship after ship came back online. First the human vessels, which had been designed with quick restart systems. Then the more complex Kelrian warships. As power returned to the command center, Admiral Zix Toral watched in amazement as the second wave of human ships held the Vorax at bay, using technology that his people would have considered obsolete centuries ago. "Your people thought of everything," he said to Lisa. She shook her head. "Not everything. But we tried to prepare for as many possibilities as we could. That's what humans do. We plan, we adapt, and we never give up." By the time the main fleet had power restored, The second wave had pushed the Vorax back to the edge of the system. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, the Admiral truly believed they might win the war. "I understand now," he said quietly to Jack. "Why you defeated the Vorax scout force. Why they feared to return to Earth." Jack nodded. "It's not our technology or our weapons that make us dangerous. It's our diversity of thought, our ability to see problems from different angles, and your willingness to help others," added the Admiral. "Even aliens you've never met before." 1 month after the second battle, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered on the Kelrian homeworld. Word had spread quickly through the galaxies. The Vorax had been defeated not once, but twice. The unbeatable enemy had finally met its match. The Grand Council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Many had traveled for weeks just to see the humans who had accomplished what no advanced civilization could. Admiral Zextoril stood before the gathered delegates, his posture proud but humble. "Friends, allies, and honored guests, we stand here today because of an unexpected savior. When the Kelrian Alliance faced extinction, we turned to Earth in desperation. We asked for warships. We asked for advanced weapons. What we received instead was far more valuable." He gestured toward the group of humans standing beside him. Lisa Walsh, Pete Gordon, Olivia Martinez, the Baker twins, Betty Alvarez, and Jack were there, along with dozens of other human ship captains. They wore their civilian clothes proudly, the practical attire of miners, researchers, cargo haulers, and everyday people. "We received humanity," continued the Admiral. "Not their weapons, but their spirit, their creativity, their determination to help others, even those they had never met." A delegate from a species known for their military prowess spoke up. "How could primitive vessels defeat the Vorax when our battleships failed?" Jack stepped forward to answer. "Because the Vorax expected battleships. They prepared for standard military tactics and conventional weapons. They didn't prepare for mining equipment, or research tools, or cargo ships carrying nanites." "What the humans brought," added Lieutenant Colorix, who now wore the insignia of a full commander, "was not superior firepower, but superior thinking. They showed us that victory doesn't always come from having the biggest guns, but from using what you have in unexpected ways." Betty Alvarez, the restaurant owner who had led the second wave of ships, nodded. "We humans have always had to make do with what we have. When I was growing up, my mother could make a delicious meal from whatever ingredients were available. I brought that same thinking to the battlefield." The council chamber buzzed with conversation as the aliens discussed this strange approach to warfare. Many were skeptical, but none could deny the results. "The Vorax are not destroyed," cautioned Admiral Zextoril. "They have retreated to their core systems to recover and adapt. They will return, perhaps in months, perhaps in years. But they will come back stronger. And we will be ready," said Lisa Walsh confidently. "We're already working on new tactics, new tools, new ways to fight them." "Not just humans," added Pete Gordon. "We're teaching Kelrian engineers how to modify their own equipment. The Baker twins are working with cargo haulers from 6 different species. Olivia has started a research exchange program." The Admiral nodded. "This is why we have called this gathering. Today, we propose a new alliance. Not one based on military might or technological advancement, but on cooperation and shared innovation." Jack stepped forward again. "The Galactic Cooperative Defense Initiative. An alliance where each species contributes what they do best, where we learn from each other and combine our unique perspectives to solve problems no single approach could." "Address, the Vorax are strong because they think as one mind," said Lisa. "We will be stronger because we think with many different minds." A representative from a small, peaceful species that had lost several colony worlds to the Vorax spoke. "Up We have no weapons, no warships. What could we possibly contribute? What do your people excel at? Asked Jack gently. We are botanists, replied the alien. We grow plants that can survive in environments no other life forms can endure. Olivia Martinez smiled. Perfect. We could use those plants to create biological agents that target Vorax crystal structures. Your peaceful knowledge could help develop an entirely new defense system. One by one, representatives from different species began to offer their own unique skills and perspectives. A race of deep space miners knew techniques that could disrupt crystal formations. Nomadic traders had mapped Vorax movement patterns while avoiding detection. Scientists from an ancient civilization had been studying Vorax communication signals for centuries. Each contribution was different. Each approach was unique. Together, they began to form something no single species could have created alone. A comprehensive strategy to defeat the Vorax permanently dot as the meeting continued. Admiral Zextoril moved to stand beside Jack. When I sent Lieutenant Colorex to Earth, I hoped for a miracle weapon, he admitted quietly. I never imagined the weapon would be humanity itself. Jack smiled. We're not weapons, Admiral. We're problem solvers. Give a human a challenge, and we'll find a way to overcome it. Not always the most elegant way or the most advanced way, but a way that works. Your people are remarkable, said the Admiral. Not because of what you can build, but because of how you think. And because we care, added Jack. When we heard about your situation, thousands of ordinary citizens volunteered to help, not for glory or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. Across the chamber, humans were now scattered among the alien delegates, sharing ideas, drawing diagrams, and building connections. Betty Alvarez was explaining to a group of fascinated aliens how she had modified her restaurant's refrigeration system to cool her ship's engines after they overheated in battle. The Baker twins were demonstrating how simple shipping containers could be converted into defensive platforms. Look at them, said the Admiral with growing wonder. They're not soldiers or diplomats. They're just pot people. That's humanity's greatest strength, replied Jack. We're not defined by what we are, but by what we choose to do. And we choose to help. 3 days later, the Galactic Cooperative Defense Initiative was officially formed. Hundreds of species joined, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the Alliance. Research centers were established throughout the galaxies, focused on developing new defenses against the VORAX. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth, Admiral Zextoril stood with Commander Colorex in the docking bay, saying farewell to Lisa Walsh and Jack. Will you return when the Vorax come back? Asked the Admiral. Lisa smiled. Of course, but next time we won't be alone. The knowledge we've shared is spreading. Every species is learning to adapt, to think differently, to use what they have in new ways. You've given us more than victory, said Commander Colorex. You've given us hope. That's what humans do best, said Jack as he boarded his ship. We find hope in the darkest situations, and we share it with others. As the human fleet departed, Admiral Zextoril looked out at the stars. They seemed brighter now, less threatening. The galaxy was still a dangerous place. The Vorax would return. But now, for the first time, he believed they could be defeated, not by superior weapons or advanced technology, but by the most unexpected fleet in the galaxy, a collection of ordinary humans who chose to help.